How's it going?
Good evening, everyone. I'm joined by a dog who's chewing on my wrist that I had surgery on not all that long ago. So I'm going to show her to you because she's fantastic. And I suspect I'm going to have to put her on the floor before long here. This is Dot. Dot, what do you have to say for yourself? Yeah, I just want to chew on mom. I want to lick mom in the face. She's adorable. I gave her a bath again today because she's been super itchy. She is a delight. She's so affectionate. She's so sweet and so cuddly. She just likes to hang on to you like this. She's pretty much the cutest puppy I've ever seen. Just licked me in the ear. That was great. But she's my little co-host tonight. We'll see how long she wants to stay up on the desk. She's so warm. I love having her around, especially since I get chilled sitting in here for whatever reason. This front room's kind of cold. Ow, please stop. She likes my finger. She doesn't like chew toys. So she's going to be chewing on probably everything in sight here in the office. I might actually have to kick her out and have Dip keep an eye on her while we're recording because Dad ditched us so he could go to California and do work or something. But he's in the chat today, so I'm excited. Thank you all for joining me with my puppy cast tonight. I want to show you guys what is called a false dilemma. This is from Leia Hailpern, whom I'm not particularly familiar with, but her tweets tend to be kind of like clickbaity, kind of outrageous. And she says, posting a picture of Andrew Tate and Sam Smith, which way Western man? That is called a false dilemma. You have other options. For example, you could look to role models like Jocko Willink. You could look at Joe Rogan. You could look at all sorts of people. You could look at David Goggins if you wanted to get super fit. You could look at Andrew Huberman if you wanted to be really smart. You could look at people like Chris Williamson, who's a lot of fun, really fun podcaster. You could look at Jordan Peterson if you wanted to be very sensitive and aware. You could look at any one of these guys. It doesn't need to be Andrew Tate versus Sam Smith. There are other male role models in the world, and all of them are better than both of them, honestly. So Leia is a little clickbaity with this one, but I just pulled it up and I was like, it's pretty good. I have to mention it for sure. But anyway, welcome you guys so much for joining me. She is not a poodle. She is a mix between a Shih Tzu, ow, 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 she's chewing on my finger again. That's going to be going on for the whole stream, I'm sure. She has some pretty good jaw strength. She's a mix between a Shih Tzu and an Australian Shepherd. Please just chew on your chewy toy. You have like a dozen up here. She's fully prepared. She could be taking advantage of her chew toys, but instead she's been trying to chew on this, which is why it is wrapped this way. And also she's been trying to chew on my finger. I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's quite red. She doesn't bite particularly hard, but she is persistent. It's delightful. Zach says they are the same guy. They are not the same guy. They might have some of the same ideas because they're not particularly nice people, either one of them, but no worries. Greg says you can go your own way. You can if you want to. But I have this prevailing idea that what really makes life good and meaningful is helping and serving other people. And that means that for a lot of people, it's going to mean biological parenthood. If you can't be a parent, you can volunteer. You can be in the Big Brothers, Big Sisters. You can adopt kids. If you're not married, you can do a lot of the same stuff. You can volunteer. You can take care of pets. You can walk pets. There's all sorts of ways that you can help people in your community. I would say that they are definitely the two extremes, though, says Surenko. Possibly. Yeah, definitely. I think you're right. They're just both kind of horrible options. I don't think either one of them are good. I guess at least Andrew Tate is fit. They're both British, so they got that going for them. Both those guys have boobs. I'm inclined to think that Andrews are more pectoral muscles than Sam Smith's are, for sure. Do you guys remember how Sam Smith used to look? I'm going to pull up an image of him from a long time ago. Let me see if I can find this old picture. Oh my gosh, he's just been ridiculous for a while now. There's an old picture of him where he looks super sharp. He looks like a really regular dude. Yeah, here, let me show you guys. This is what Sam looked like in Lollapalooza in 2015. So about 8 years ago, he looked sane, reasonable, put together, trim, neat. He has a good singing voice, so he's got that going for him. I think probably a good rule of thumb with people like Sam, as he is right now, is to just wish that they find the purpose that they're looking for, because it's so clear to me that both Andrew Tate and Sam Smith are clearly lacking some form of purpose. And I would tie this back to what I said just a minute ago about servanthood and servant leadership, because that's what Jocko Willink pushes. That's what he found in his military service. That's something David Goggins sometimes talks about. Interviewers like Andrew Huberman and Chris Williamson are always just listening and asking questions of smart people. And I think that's really, really valuable. Maybe not servant leadership as such, but it's kind of more along the lines of caring to hear what other people have to say. So, what I meant to say about Dot is that she's not a poodle. She is a Shih Tzu and Australian Shepherd mix. And I was telling my mother-in-law today that I expect her to develop more colors as she gets older. We also have no idea how big she's going to be. So she could be kind of leggy like an Aussie, or she could remain kind of short like a loaf of bread like a Shih Tzu. So it's going to be really fun to watch her grow. You guys will be along for the ride, so that will be fun. Dip is sitting right outside of the office. He's guarding the entrance in his little cushy chair. That's probably about 30 years old and falling apart. That's why it's his. Let's talk about why the Washington Post says eggs are cheaper than you think. And you guys may be surprised to find that Megan is a relatively moderate author. I was reading one of her other articles about why parents should be involved in the gender transitions of children. And she seems to at least attempt to be relatively balanced. She's no Paul Krugman. She's no whoever that other guy we were reading the other day was. I want to say Leonard Downey was his name. Yeah, the guy who was like, we don't need objectivity anymore. I don't even know what that means. Never mind that I've worked in the news industry my entire life. Holy cow, wild. Let's read this article and see what she has to say. Everyone in the US seems obsessed with eggs right now, my British editor told me. It's so bizarre. Is it though? Indeed we are. The soaring price of eggs has given rise to internet memes and a fair amount of conspiracizing, I don't know if that's a word, including from a US senator about monopolistic egg producers colluding to raid the pockets of hardworking, egg-loving Americans. Yeah, that is a conspiracy. I don't think that's the case. The truth is that the U.S. egg production is still recovering from a bout of avian flu that has devastated flocks in the United States and Europe. I mentioned this to somebody online because I was like, guys, this isn't actually Joe Biden's fault. The price of eggs itself is not directly attributable to the president. I said we had a huge bout of avian flu when something like 29% of our egg production was wiped out, and they said, and I quote, Joe Biden was in office when it happened. And I was like, okay, this is not the political discourse I intend to have, so I kind of left that one alone. It was crazy. While activists and senators are puzzled about how a 29% decline in egg production can lead to a much larger increase in the price of eggs, agricultural economist Jason Lusk says that's exactly what you would expect with a product for which demand is relatively insensitive to price changes. Yeah, 100%. Americans do love eggs. We consume an average of 277 per person per year, and unfortunately, eggs don't have a lot of close substitutes. That's true. Eggs have a very particular chemical makeup that makes them great for baking. Very, very important in a lot of recipes that call for flour, baking soda, baking powder, and eggs. Crucial to making baked goods turn out properly. If the price of meat rises, you can downgrade from steak to ground round, but when the price of eggs goes up, well, most people don't want to make do with a yogurt omelet or toss a block of tofu into their cake in lieu of egg whites. I don't even think that would work. This inelasticity explains why the price of eggs has spiked so much from $1.79 in December 2021 to $4.25 a year later, and also why we've noticed we're buying a lot of pricey eggs and we resent it. The good news is that flocks are recovering and the price of eggs has already begun to decline. In the meantime, it might help to contemplate that as expensive as they are, eggs are still really cheap, historically speaking. This is actually a point that I make, so we're going to hear her out to the end of the article. If you look at old cookbooks, you will notice that the authors seem to view eggs and chicken as almost a luxury good. My 1950 Betty Crocker's Picture Cookbook contains recipes for making mock chicken dishes out of veal. Go back further, and the 1896 Fanny Farmer Cookbook sternly informs readers that eggs, even at 25 cents per dozen, should not be freely used by the strict economist. Well, that's just good housekeeping. An odd assertion to the modern ear until you realize that in 1896, a pound of round steak was about 35% cheaper than a pound of eggs. Today, by contrast, a pound of eggs, about 9 eggs, would cost you roughly $3.21 at my grocery store, while a pound of round steak is $8.69. In between then and now, we have a vast increase in household incomes and a shift in the price of chicken relative to other meats. In 1901, the average family spent 42.5% of its budget on food, and according to economist Deirdre McCloskey, a typical middle-class household devoted about 44 hours per week to preparing food. By 2021, U.S. consumers were spending about 10% of their household income on food and less than 10 hours a week preparing it. Advances in food processing, coupled with a century of economic growth, have liberated almost 35 hours a week and a full 30% of our incomes to spend on something else. That's great. This is how Human Progress works. I don't know if you guys follow Human Progress on Twitter, but they are a wonderful, uplifting, very encouraging page. That has happened even as our food consumption has shifted toward things that would have been luxuries back then. People eat berries out of season, fresh seafood, even far inland, and the average person eats about 6 times as much chicken as they would have a century ago. Which brings us to the relative price shift. Almost all food items have gotten much cheaper relative to our incomes than they were a century ago. But some food prices fell faster than others, and chicken and eggs were among those that saw the greatest improvements thanks to a combination of agriculture innovations. Raising chickens indoors helped protect them from disease and predators. Providing them with warmer conditions and artificial light helped extend the laying season when otherwise stops in winter. This is something I don't think people were aware of when they were conspiracizing about the reduction of egg production in their own coops. So people who raise chickens were pointing out that their chickens stopped laying about September. They said it must be something in the food. What happened here? And then I started to think about it and I thought, you know what? These people probably are first-time chicken owners. And I was reminded of my time raising, we had a little farm that had a grand total of about 50 chickens at any given time. And one of the things that my dad talked about with us, and one of the things that we very clearly observed in Colorado when things really got cold and when the days got super short in the winter, was that they would not lay. Hardly at all. If they did lay, the eggs would sometimes freeze, which was a different problem. But what we ended up doing was installing red lights inside their coops to make sure that they were warm and make sure that they had like more of the full spectrum light they needed to have the energy to lay eggs. And I was thinking, you know, I wonder if some of these first-time chicken owners don't know that when the days get shorter, chickens are much less likely to lay eggs, like your production is going to drop. Now, if you guys are able to give me evidence that the food has been tampered with, is something Candace Owens was tweeting about that I wasn't able to back up. If you're able to see that there's a link between the food and the egg production, by all means, send that my way. You guys are more than welcome to tweet that at me. That's kind of interesting, but I think that's kind of thinking too deeply about it. It is winter. We did just lose 29% of our laying eggs, and it is no joke at all. And she is correct that the price of eggs is starting to come down again. But let's continue. Farmers developed raised cages, which has helped increase egg production as having breeding programs. Modern hens have gone from laying about 150 eggs per year per hen in the 1930s to 296 today. Wow. These advances haven't come without cost. Modern farming techniques can raise serious concerns about animal welfare. Yes. And I make a point of buying cage-free eggs which carry the label of the Human Farm Animal Care's Certified Humane Program. And of course, the antibiotics we use to keep commercially farmed animals healthy might be contributing to antibiotic resistance. These are all very valid concerns. But this is the crux of her argument and something with which I agree. All right, calm down, Dawn. The benefits of this revolution have also been enormous. In 1905, an average male factory worker older than 16 took home $11.16 a week, enough to buy about 41 cartons of eggs. Today, the median man earns $1,176 a week, enough to buy more than 275 cartons of eggs, even at today's elevated prices. If you can't help cringing when you see the cashier ring up eggs that cost twice as much as they did a year ago, it might help to remember that however poor you feel, your ancestors would have taken one look at your grocery cart and declared you rich beyond their dreams. This is actually a point that I make relatively often, and you guys are welcome to disagree with me. I have observed that Americans are incredibly lucky and incredibly blessed. We live in a country where our poorest poor people are sometimes richer than Europe's middle class. And we have a social safety net that, for better or worse, is incredibly comprehensive and almost everybody is able to take advantage of if they need it. We have air conditioning, we have indoor plumbing. These are things that monarchs would not have had 250 years ago. So I think that we need to remember where we are in history. If I had one wish, it would be for every single person who's listening to me tonight to go over to Dan Carlin's podcast, Hardcore History, and listen to some episodes of that and see if it gives you a little bit of a frame of reference for where we're at today. Because I feel like we live in a gilded cage, like we live in a world of fluffy cotton candy and, freely available sugar, on-demand TV, we have indoor heating, running water, electricity, all of this stuff we're incredibly lucky to have. I spent too long on this, but I just wanted to drive that point home that we are living in a time that our ancestors could never have anticipated. And I know that money doesn't go as far as it used to. And it's really discouraging to a lot of people, and it's not their fault that the economy is not good. But at the same time, I feel like if we focus on the positives and try to maintain our gratitude, we're going to be a lot happier than we would otherwise. But you guys are welcome to disagree with me here. Let me see what you all are saying. Then we're going to hop into talking about Joe Biden's speech. Dun dun dun. All right. I would say that they are definitely too expensive, though. Sorry. I already read that one. Sacred is not found in the brashness of the profane or the zealous. That's a good point. Oh, they're going to tell us eggs should have been a luxury. Should always have been a luxury? That's not what she said. No. That's kind of what I thought when I saw her headline. It's a little bit edgy, but I'm going to disagree. Chickens start laying when they're about 7 months old, so prices should start dropping soon after that. Correct. Yeah, so we should be well out of it before too long. Although, to be fair, Democrat policies have made the price of everything go up, which is why it feels so tight right now for everybody. I know, I literally make better money than I would have ever dreamed of being able to make. I consider myself incredibly blessed. Andy, I'm so glad he's in a position where he's able to do what he loves and make good money. We have health insurance and all this good stuff, but it's still hard. I work in a chicken factory, Tyson. The kill and production hasn't changed since 2 years ago. There's no shortage of chickens, so the price is artificially inflated. I wonder if just because you're not seeing it in your factory doesn't mean it's not happening elsewhere. I'm not sure what part of the U.S. the shortage is concentrated in. My grandma grew up during the Depression. A luxury for her as a child was a slice of white bread with butter and sugar. Yes, that's called fairy bread, and that was considered a dessert for a lot of different people throughout history, which is good to remember as we complain about not being able to get DoorDash and Twinkies and stuff. My neighbor gives me eggs, I give her pies. This week was strawberry rhubarb pie. That is a fantastic exchange. If you have neighbors who have chickens, definitely set up some kind of exchange with them. I think rhubarb is the perfect medium for exchange. If there was a chicken shortage, my hours would be cut due to lack of work available. I typically work 6 days a week. I'm glad you're able to work. If you are paid by the hour, that's fantastic. I used to work 6 or 7 days a week myself, and there's money to be made if you're willing to work really hard. I made a Depression-era chocolate cake without eggs or milk. It was pretty good. You substitute baking soda and vinegar as the leavening, and thankfully you don't taste the vinegar, lol. Yeah, so there are actually chocolate cake recipes in which you put mayonnaise, and that's supposed to really make it good too, which I've never been quite brave enough to do, and I don't usually make chocolate cakes anyway. I tend to make cookies and stuff like that if I am going to bake, which is kind of a luxury for me too. But a huge egg farm burned down last week in Connecticut. That's right, which was interesting too. But one of the things that we started to observe while I was still at Timcast was that a lot of food production factories were blowing up. Now, Tim was saying that it was par for the course. There wasn't really anything out of the ordinary, but I was reading somebody who was talking about how it really, really points to the fact that we need to decentralize some of these systems and make ourselves much more independent. I think that was Mike Glover. He's a fantastic source. All right, you guys, let's talk about the Dementor in chief. I'm going to start calling him the Dementor because he looks like a soul sucker and he is a little bit demented. White House sends out error-laden economy fact sheet on eve of SOTU, which is the State of the Union. That is the address. That's this evening at 9 p.m. I'm sure they will be covering part of that on Teamcast IRL. Let's read what lies they tried to set up before the State of the Union. The White House sent out a misleading fact sheet about the economy on Monday, one day before President Joe Biden is set to address the American people in the State of the Union. The fact sheet, entitled "The Biden Economic Plan is Working," that is just straight up propaganda. I don't care if it's the White House. That's a crazy title. Lays out how the Biden administration has shown economic, quote, progress over the past 2 years, a topic the president aims to highlight in his Tuesday night speech. Despite Biden declaring an economic victory over the deficit, a manufacturing boom, and winning against Big Pharma, several of the facts are misleading claims. In the last 2 years, the administration cut the deficit by more than $1.7 trillion, the largest deficit reduction in American history. That doesn't sound right. The president believes we need to continue that progress and reward work, not wealth, says the statement. The deficit largely fell because of the expiration of COVID-19 funding, not due to the Biden administration's efforts. Check your fact reported. 80% of the $1.8 trillion or so falling deficit is because of expiring or waning COVID relief. The remaining 20% you can explain by economic changes, including a stronger than expected economy and especially higher inflation, which leads to higher tax revenue. Interesting. So the Biden administration is literally using the fact that inflation is insanely high to pretend that their economic plan is working. Fact check. Joe Biden claims the debt was reduced under his presidency. Verdict, false. Dun, dun, dun. Check Your Fact is not a right-leaning source, so good for them for calling it out. Oh, let's see here. The next one. The fact sheet then claims that Biden's economic plan has generated a manufacturing boom across the country and has built an economy where no one is left behind. No one's left behind. No one. The boom of manufacturing the administration is referring to, however, largely coincided with, dun dun dun, coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, millions of jobs created or saved. Wink, wink. There were 12.785 million manufacturing employees across the country in February of 2020. The Trump administration saw a large decline of manufacturing jobs that coincided with the onset of the pandemic, dropping to 11.414 million in April of 2020, and the Biden administration brought the numbers back up to 12.99 in January 2023, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. The fact sheet continues to tout Biden's victory over Big Pharma. I just want to mention about the manufacturing jobs. So it was 12.785 in 2020 before the pandemic really set in. And then we brought it back up to 12.999 million. So we are basically where we were in 2020. Do you guys think that if we had allowed the economy to continue on the path it was on, that we would still be exactly where we were 3 years ago? Neither do I. Absolutely not. Of course not. No economic graph looks like that. The fact sheet continues to tout Biden's victory over Big Pharma, saying Medicare will be able to negotiate drug prices and cap out-of-pocket pharmacy costs at $2,000 per year. The victory claim is missing context, as the cap is on out-of-pocket pharmacy costs will not go into effect until 2025. Wow, so this literally isn't even happening and won't be until after Biden's first term is over. Biden will discuss more economic claims in the State of the Union, specifically cutting prescription drug costs, health insurance premiums, and energy bills while driving the uninsured rate to historic lows, the statement read. Where is the rest of this? Is that really all? Oh, boo. Okay. Well, it sounds like they're just making stuff up at this point. So honestly, I'm kind of looking forward to the State of the Union. We'll have to see what he has to say. Let's all play Biden's State of the Union bingo. There's a link to this in my description. This is from the Daily Mail. How many times will the president mention Putin, MAGA Republicans, taxes on the rich, the Chinese spy balloon? None. Whisper or make a gaffe in his major speech at 9 p.m. tonight? This is going to be fun. Here's what we got. January 6th. I won't defund the police. Gas prices? Come on, man. My predecessor, Trump. As my mother would say, I would say my father used to say Joey. That would be the other one I would be looking for. Chinese spy balloon. I don't think he's going to mention that at all. I inherited a bad economy. Of course, he's going to say that probably more than once. We have Putin, probably Putin's price hike because he seems to favor that. The rich should pay their fair share. Oh my gosh, they all say the exact same things. Classified documents, he won't mention that either. I don't think he's going to mention either of these two. Here we have gaffe, which is very open for interpretation. Malarkey, it's going to be fun. Cough. I would say also clears throat because he likes to do that too. Extreme MAGA Republicans, for sure. We will see a lot of that. Infrastructure, Amtrak story, yes, definitely. Whispers into the microphone. Shouts. My son Beau. Jill, or I married a teacher. When in God's name, oh gosh, Ukraine, we've reduced the deficit, and border/title 42, 49. I don't think he's going to mention my son Hunter, not at all. I think it's very likely he will shout, he will certainly whisper, he will probably call, I'm willing to bet, so I think he's going to call Kamala Harris the president because he likes to do that. And I think he's going to say more than half of the people in his administration, more than half of the women in his administration are women, which is very fun. I personally think he just ran into Rachel Levine one day and realized that, wow, these aren't all ladies. And I also think that he's going to once again threaten to nuke the people who politically disagree with him. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So this is the Daily Mail's take, and I think that they're on the right track, but the left has their own bingo card, and this is more of the topics. This is from Move On, which is actually a George Soros organization, which is very fun. It's time to prosecute and convict Trump. Add your name. Okay, guys. Will debate moderators allow Joe Biden to talk about his plan for America that works for all, not just the privileged few? Follow along tonight's debate with this bingo card of big ideas that Biden supports. Yeah, if he can even remember them. Biden's big ideas bingo. Expand the Affordable Care Act. Green jobs. Investigate systemic police misconduct. Universal preschool. Double drive-in testing sites. No, he's not going to talk about that. Absolutely not. In fact, I want you guys to play along with both those bingo cards tonight. I'm going to be doing it too. I'm probably going to be live tweeting it because I think that would be hilarious. Raise pay for caregivers. Protect Roe v. Wade. Oh, definitely. Restore the Voting Rights Act. Maybe. $15 minimum wage. Probably not. I don't think that's going to be popular in this economy. Free COVID testing. I don't think COVID is enough of a topic anymore. End mandatory minimums. Strengthen unions. Free community college. Decriminalize marijuana. I don't see it. Restore funding to Planned Parenthood. Very likely. Premium pay for essential workers, expand emergency unemployment, nationwide testing and tracing. These are all nonsense. I don't know. So Move On has 358,000 followers, and on this particular tweet, they got 36 likes. Good work, guys. You have serious engagement. I get more likes than that, and I have far fewer followers. Listen to scientists. Maybe. He better not mention Fauci. Unified National COVID Response. I don't think he's going to mention COVID at all. So you guys may mark my words. I'll write my little predictions on these guys. Deliver PPE to frontline workers. Abolish the death penalty. Interesting. I haven't heard him talk much about that. Have you guys? Emergency funding for public schools? No way. No. Eliminate private prisons. Peaceful transition of power. Unless he's talking about January 6th, I don't see him talking about that either. I think that their card is way out of touch. I thought they would be more focused on things that he's like actually pushed on. Oh, you guys, this is from 2 years ago. Okay. All right. I confess my mistake. I'm really kind of curious to see how many of these issues he pushes through again. He's definitely not going to bring up a lot of COVID stuff. He's not going to bring up the $15 minimum wage at all. And he's probably not going to talk about expanding emergency unemployment because that's not such an issue anymore. Wow, 2 years ago and still only 36 likes. Jeez. Okay. Well, I'm glad that I caught the date. You guys should still check it out, and you guys should really be aware of Move On because it is a George Soros funded organization for sure. Just wish I'd caught that it was 2 years old before. I just wanted to offer like an alternative to the Daily Mail's bingo card, and it's kind of more interesting to talk about Joe Biden's issues. Let's see here. Oh yeah, speaking of COVID, we're going to talk about that next, but let's see what you guys are thinking. I hope that you guys are going to do this bingo card with me. Somebody says chickens are like plants, LOL, possibly. So if you live in darkness, you don't have a period. Is it a worthy trade, ladies? Okay, so that's not what happens to humans. It just happens to chickens for whatever reason. Maybe they need extra vitamin D to create eggshells. Could they be trying to condition us into believing that eating eggs is a luxury or a delicatessen or a delicacy? I don't think you mean delicatessen. I think you mean a delicacy, that we should not consume eggs on the regular. I don't know. I don't think so. I also know that eggs are a part of a vegetarian diet. So I personally find that unlikely. Good evening, Lydia and Andy. Good evening, Paul. Good evening. Good evening. We will see if they choose to change the narrative around eggs. I haven't seen a lot of that. If you guys have seen that kind of narrative coming out, definitely let me know. Again, you guys are more than welcome to tweet this at me. It's kind of interesting stuff, and I always welcome these interesting sources. No, we don't need perspective. We need to be angry. Yes. So I don't know if you guys have seen the, I think it's Poorly Drawn Lines. I don't want a solution. I want to be angry. That's one of my favorite comics. Let me see if I can find it. I only have one hand. My other hand is rapidly falling asleep. Under dot. I don't want. There we go. Okay, here we go. Ha, yeah. I'm mad. Here's a solution. I don't want a solution. He's burning it. I want to be mad. This is exactly what it's like to be on social media. And in fact, I think a lot of people internalize this, or maybe it's just that social media lets people just come out and say it really freely. But it turns out that humans, by and large, really do just want to be mad. They want to feel convinced that they're correct in their righteous anger, unfortunately. So, speaking of COVID, we are going to talk about this editorial from Newsweek from Kevin Bass. He is a doctor's student / PhD student in med school. My hand is like completely asleep, so I have to move the dog, unfortunately. I'm going to really gently drop her head. She likes to fall asleep with her head on my arm. Unfortunately, my arm tends to fall asleep. And I'm completely losing feeling in the last 3 fingers on my hand, so I got to move it. It's time for the scientific community to admit we were wrong about COVID and it cost lives. Interesting. Let's read what Kevin has to say. As a medical student and researcher, I staunchly supported the efforts of the public health authorities when it came to COVID-19. I believed that the authorities responded to the largest public health crisis of our lives with compassion, diligence, and scientific expertise. I was with them when they called for lockdowns, vaccines, and boosters. I was wrong. We in the scientific community were wrong, and it costs lives. Wow. That is a very bold assertion, and I'm very impressed with him for saying it. I can see now that the scientific community, from the CDC to the WHO to the FDA and their representatives, repeatedly overstated the evidence and misled the public about its own views and policies, including on natural versus artificial immunity, school closures and disease transmission, aerosol spread, mask mandates, and vaccine efficacy and safety, especially among the young. All of these were scientific mistakes at the time, not in hindsight. Amazingly, some of these obfuscations continue to the present day. I know, it's shocking, right? But perhaps more important than any individual error was how inherently flawed the overall approach of the scientific community was and continues to be. It was flawed in a way that undermined its efficacy and resulted in thousands, if not millions, of preventable deaths. Wow, this guy's not pulling his punches, and I appreciate it. Thank you, Kevin. What we did not properly appreciate is that preferences determine how scientific expertise is used, and that our preferences might be, indeed our preferences were, very different from many of the people that we serve. We created policy based on our preferences, then justified it using data. That's exactly backward. That is not at all how science is supposed to work. And then we portrayed those opposing our efforts as misguided, ignorant, selfish, and evil. We made science a team sport, and in so doing, we made it no longer science. It became us versus them, and they responded the only way anyone might expect them to, by resisting. 100%. We excluded important parts of the population from policy development and castigated critics, which meant that we deployed a monolithic response across an exceptionally diverse nation, forging a society more fractured than ever and exacerbated long-standing health and economic disparities. Our emotional response and ingrained partisanship prevented us from seeing the full impact of our actions on the people we were supposed to serve. We systematically minimized the downsides of intervention we imposed without the input, consent, and recognition of those forced to live with them. In so doing, we violated the autonomy of those who would be most negatively impacted by our policies: the poor, the working class, small business owners, blacks and Latinos, and children. These populations were overlooked because they were made invisible to us by their systematic exclusion from the dominant corporatized media machine that presumed omniscience. Wow, this is a stunning indictment of the media and the science machine. Most of us did not speak up in support of alternative views, and many of us tried to suppress them. When strong scientific voices like world-renowned Stanford professors John Ioannidis, Jay Bhattacharya, and Scott Atlas, or University of California San Francisco professors Vinay Prasad and Monica Gandhi sounded the alarm on behalf of vulnerable communities, they face severe censure by relentless mobs of critics and detractors in the scientific community. So you notice he's not even mentioning big tech because that's outside his wheelhouse, and I completely understand that. But what happened here was that science, the scientific community, as they called themselves, was able to weaponize big tech for their own ends. And this is a serious sign of the overlap between these two different fields. It should never have been like this. There should not have been the force of the government behind the science and behind the big tech that censored these people. Often not on the basis of fact, but solely on the basis of differences in scientific opinion. When former President Trump pointed out the downsides of intervention, he was dismissed publicly as a buffoon. And when Dr. Anthony Fauci opposed Trump and became the hero of the public health community, we gave him our support to do and say what he wanted, even when he was wrong. Trump was not remotely perfect, nor were the academic critics of consensus policy. But the scorn that we laid on them was a disaster for public trust in the pandemic response. Our approach eliminated large segments of the population from what should have been a national collaborative project. As we paid the price, the rage of those marginalized by the expert class exploded onto and dominated social media. Lacking the scientific lexicon to express their disagreement, many dissidents turned to conspiracy theories and a cottage industry of scientific contortionists to make their case against the expert class consensus that dominated the pandemic mainstream. I think he is spot on the money because most people don't speak the language of statistics and science and studies and research. It's complicated, okay? My former husband worked in the field of veterinary medicine, which is heavily overlapped with the human medicine industry, and he would explain to me some of this research, and I did not understand how they perform these studies. I didn't know how they reached these conclusions. I didn't have the background in statistics that was required to understand this stuff, and it led to a lot of disagreement because I was telling him my good faith opinions, and he was calling me a conspiracy theorist and a far-right activist, and I was like, dude, I'm just looking at the way I think things are, and you're calling me stupid because I'm not as educated as you. Incredibly hurtful. I could actually pin the rise of COVID partly on the decay of my marriage because what he's talking about here is exactly what happened there. Aside from him being overseas for 6 out of the 8 years. But it was like, it's just this utter contempt for people who are not as smart as the elites. This is something Thomas Sowell talks about too. Labeling this speech misinformation and blaming it on scientific illiteracy and ignorance, the government conspired with big tech, wow, he is mentioning it, to aggressively suppress it, erasing the valid political concerns of the government's opponents. And this despite the fact that pandemic policy was created by a razor-thin sliver of American society who anointed themselves to preside over the working class. Members of academia, government, medicine, journalism, tech, and public health who are highly educated and privileged. Yes, we call these people the laptop class because they can afford to stay home with their little laptops and order DoorDash from the plebs, the poor working class who had to expose themselves to this illness. Really disgusting stuff that we saw during the pandemic. From the comfort of their privilege, the elite prizes paternalism as opposed to the average Americans who laud self-reliance and those daily lives routinely demand that they reckon with risk. That many of our leaders neglected to consider the lived experience of those across the class divide is unconscionable. Incomprehensible to us due to this class divide, we severely judged lockdown critics as lazy, backwards, even evil. We dismissed as grifters those who represented their interests. We believed misinformation energized the ignorant, and we refused to accept that such people simply had a different, valid point of view. This is part of the problem with a lot of the political conversation that still goes on to this day, and it has a lot to do with the divide between left and right in America. We refuse to believe that the other side is arguing in good faith. And you can't have a truly good conversation unless you assume you have to go into it with the assumption that the person on the other side hopes for the best. They really do want the best for people. They want the best for their own family. They're trying to do the right thing for the country, even if they are totally wrong with how they're going about doing it. We crafted policy for people without consulting them. If our public health officials had led with less hubris, the course of the pandemic in the United States might have had a very different outcome with far fewer lost lives. Instead, we have witnessed a massive and ongoing loss of life in America due to distrust of vaccines and the healthcare system, a massive concentration in wealth by already wealthy elites, yes, a rise in suicide and gun violence, especially among the poor, yes, a near doubling of the rate of depression and anxiety disorders, especially among the young, yes, most unconscionable. A catastrophic loss of educational attainment among already disadvantaged children, and among those most vulnerable, a massive loss of trust in healthcare, science, scientific authorities, and political leaders more broadly. He is nailing it. I think he's correct on every count. You guys might not think he goes far enough. You guys probably still believe that, Pfizer is actually evil, Bill Gates is out to get us all, and all that other stuff. But I really appreciate that he's taking this 30,000 foot view and that he's coming from the perspective of the medical profession. I think that's really important and we need to hear him out. My motivation for writing this is simple. It is clear to me that for public trust to be restored in science, scientists should be publicly discussing what went right and what went wrong during the pandemic and where we could have done better. It is okay to be wrong and admit where one was wrong and what one learned. That's a central part of the way science works. Great point. Yet I fear many are too entrenched in groupthink and too afraid to publicly take responsibility to do this. Solving these problems in the long term requires a greater commitment to pluralism and tolerance in our institutions, including the inclusion of critical, if unpopular, voices. Intellectual elitism, credentialism, and classism must end. Restoring trust in public health and our democracy depends on it. Kevin Bass is an MD/PhD student at a medical school in Texas. He is in his 7th year. The views expressed in this article are the writer's own. All right, well, I'm really curious what you guys think about this. It's a very interesting conversation. I feel like he says a lot of really important things. Let's see here. New Bern, North Carolina, the home of Tryon Palace and the birthplace of Pepsi. I don't know what that's about. Make a Gaff should be a free space on the Biden bingo, 100%. Trunana Shabbat pressure. I can't even pronounce that right. President Harris. Yes, I'm putting President Harris on my personal bingo card. I hope you guys will join me. That sounds like a lot of time. Sounds like a lot of fun. Somebody said, did lids just get nerfed? I don't think I did. Let me switch my camera so I can check the stream. Should be good to go. Let me pull it up here. Pull that up, Jamie. I am my own Jamie. All right, let's see here. So we got... Nope, we're good. Good to go. Yeah, looking like it's working. Yeah, so just refresh your stream if that happens and try and make sure that you're, have good internet connection. But what is a woman? I'm not a biologist. Threatening political opponents with physical violence. Yes. We guys, we could totally make our own Biden bingo card and that would be a lot of fun. Systemic preschool supremacy climate programs. The order doesn't matter. Just say the words. Yes, 100%. He probably will pat himself on the back for beating COVID. Yep, 100%. Why are they comparing the monthly paycheck to eggs? How many days of rent does that buy? Yeah, I don't appreciate her comparison of a paycheck versus eggs. Really silly. Cody says all lies and nothing but deflection. I'm not sure what you were referring to, whether that was from the Washington Post or Joe Biden's speech or this from Kevin Bass, which I completely disagree with it if it is about that. I don't want to feel good. I want to feel evil, says Skeletor. Yes, that is exactly in line with our comic that we just showed from Poorly Drawn Lines about I don't want a solution. I want to feel mad. I can pay my rent at Grackle for like 3 dozen eggs. Yeah, honestly. Time to hold the WHO, NIH, AMA, and FDA accountable. I agree. Heating it up, though, costs nearly 2 dozen. Yeah, so the price of energy has risen crazy, rent is up, and the cost of eggs are up. Everything is out to get us. Greg says, science is a tool. It's the result of that tool's use that you must bend around, not the other way around. That's correct. You're looking for the truth. And Miyamoto Musashi said, truth does not bend to what you wanted to do. You have to bend your own stances or you will end up living a lie. Truth is not what you want it to be. It is what it is. And you must bend to its will or live a lie. That's one of my favorite quotes. Andy says, I can see you. Thank you, dear. I can see you as well. Oh yeah, Cliff says bonus points if it is a blood red backdrop. Okay guys, get out a piece of printer paper. I have some right over there. I'm going to put together a bingo card and I'm going to post a picture of it on Twitter. So join me over there and show me all of yours. This is your homework for this evening. It's going to be a lot of fun. We've got a little time before 9 and also a little time before Timcast IRL starts too. So we are going to talk about Oklahoma and this is why. Children and teenagers should be protected. Oklahoma bill to limit transgender health services. We'll also talk about the age they chose to push this to, and you guys can tell me if you think this is right too. Oklahoma City. One of several bills introduced in the 2023 Oklahoma legislative session would limit transgender health care for Oklahomans under 21. Children and teenagers should be protected from bad peer influences and sometimes bad advice from adults from long-term repercussions they may not recognize, said Representative Jim Olson. Olson wrote the bill to help misguided children avoid the regret they may feel later in life after receiving hormone blockers or gender-affirming care. If you decide to go back to the way you were, you might partly get back there, but outside a miracle from God, you cannot fully go back, he said, and he's not wrong. Olson said he spoke with some medical providers when drafting this bill and at least one person who detransitioned years after they underwent surgery. Through the bill, providers could face felony charges or imprisonment if they give treatment to anyone under the age requirement. The penalties in Olson's bill are identical to the bill he introduced and was passed by the Oklahoma legislature to limit abortion care in the state. Good. Trust Women is a clinic that was impacted by the strict abortion law, and staff there expect House Bill 1011 to cause the same confusion and limitations. Good. We know that gender-affirming care helps people with their mental health, and it helps them be more fully able to live as themselves. Also, it gives us a lot of money, just saying, said Trust Women Clinic Director Kaylee Vollinger. She probably gets a fat paycheck off people who want gender-affirming care. Gender-affirming care doesn't just mean hormones. It doesn't mean everybody gets surgery, right? Right? Okay. Every patient has different needs, so just helping them figure out how to get what they need. That doesn't make sense. Trust Women provides abortion care, gender-affirming care, and treatment for opioid use disorder. Okay, that's fine. The clinic's appointments for gender-affirming care were put on hold when states surrounding Oklahoma started banning abortion and Trust Women started seeing more out-of-state patients. The clinic recently announced transgender health services will return to the Oklahoma City location. Doesn't sound like it will be for long. Hopefully we can use our experience to help support and uplift people in this community that either need this care or have been providing it in a more substantive way than us, said Vollinger. All right, I don't really care what Trust Women has to say about this because they literally make money off both abortion and transgender stuff. There will probably be a couple different bills where it comes to transgender issues, minors, panel said in a live interview. We want to make sure that, again, that kind of transitioning for adults can happen, but in minors, we're going to make sure that we protect kids in the state of Oklahoma, and it's not something that we would support, again, for minors. That doesn't make sense. I wish people would speak more concisely. Olson said the age requirements in his bill could be changed to 18 years old. Another bill introduced in the Oklahoma Senate had the age requirement at 26 years old. Interesting age. I'm curious what you guys think. I know that Democrats are trying to lower the age of voting. I personally would like to raise the age of voting, drafting, drinking, smoking, gambling, all that stuff to like 25. Seriously. Because people aren't maturing like they used to be. Like a 12-year-old from like 1800 would be comparable to like a 22-year-old from today. The decision made by Oklahoma lawmakers on gender-affirming care could have an impact on surrounding states. Yep, for sure. At least 11 other states have introduced similar legislation to limit gender-affirming care to minors. Advocates in Oklahoma have already started preparing for potential bans. Good. I'm very glad this is happening. So I wanted to point out to you guys that there is literally an insurrection going on at the Capitol building in Tulsa. Transgender rights protesters gather at Oklahoma Capitol ahead of State of the State. This is literally insurrection. All of these people should be going to jail with intractable sentences. You can't erase us. Save trans lives. Okay. Several Republican lawmakers are seeking to limit gender-affirming care. Yes, this we know. Okay, ahead of the legislative session starting Monday, GOP lawmakers pre-filed at least 4 bills that would ban this care for many transgender Oklahomans. Numerous bills would block children and some adults from receiving gender-affirming care. That includes puberty blockers, cross-sex hormone therapy, and gender reassignment surgery. Did you mean genital mutilation? Governor Kevin Stitt has called for a statewide ban on gender transition and therapies for minors. Last year, Stitt signed bills to prevent transgender athletes from participating in female sports and to require students to use a school restroom that corresponds to the gender on their birth certificate. Good. Sounds like Oklahoma is undeniably based and coming up in the ranks. Oklahomans for Equality in Tulsa and Freedom Oklahoma and Oklahoma City are among advocates rallying Monday at the Capitol for the rights of trans people. Cool beans. All right. Well, I just wanted to point out the clear hypocrisy between the less rallying cries and the rights. This person looks very happy and wholesome. All of these people look very happy and very balanced. None of these people look like Antifa at all. Like this one. Goodness gracious. These are like the most poorly adjusted people you'll ever see. But I also wanted to draw attention to this article, and then we just have one more, so we might end a little bit early. Mother admits she regrets letting her son, 4, transition to a girl's identity and describes realizing her mistake was like leaving a cult after she'd previously spent years being a true believer in transgender ideology. A mom regrets letting her older son transition after her younger wanted to copy. She said both her sons now identify as boys and both are blossoming. Thank goodness. A mother has admitted regretting letting her 4-year-old son socially transition to a girl and said she realized her mistake and it was like leaving a cult. Good for her. Rose, who wishes to stay anonymous, raised her 2 sons as gender neutral with her wife, which was reflected in their clothes, toys, and language. When her 4-year-old son said he felt like a girl, the mother encouraged him in his new identity, which she has now admitted was a mistake that haunts her. Her concerns rose when her younger son, then 3, said he too wanted to transition to a girl despite being more of a stereotypical boy. Her honest confession comes amid growing cultural tensions in the U.S. over the transition of children, as many believe the ideology is introduced too early. I don't know if you guys recall, I'm old enough to remember 6 months ago when they were telling us that children were not being transitioned. That was an effing lie. Let's just put it that way. Lie detector determined that was a lie. Rose realized she had led her sons to transition and immediately worked hard to reverse the mistake. She said both her sons, now around 8 and 9, are living happily as boys and are blossoming and growing. That's great. I'm really happy to hear that. Luckily for her, she didn't do anything irreversible. Here's a quote from her. I am no longer a true believer. This experience for me has felt like leaving a cult that would have me sacrifice my child to the gods of gender ideology in the name of social justice and collective liberation. I have left this cult and I am never turning back. She should publicize her name. She should come out and she should make sure that this doesn't happen to other kids. I really hope that she does. I really, really do, because she's in such a powerful position to speak to parents of kids who really care about what happens to their kids, because I know that a lot of parents with these kids, I would like to believe that most of them are operating in good faith. Some of them are very ideologically possessed, like Rose would probably tell you that she was. But I feel like if she had that experience, she would be in exactly the correct position to discuss this with these parents. So hopefully she will go out and protest with somebody like Billboard Chris or Chloe Cole, people like that. At the time, Rose said she was a social justice organizer and facilitator who would introduce the concept of intersectionality to progressive organizations and have people share their pronouns. But following her experience, she has stopped being an activist and instead become a skeptic. It comes amid culture wars in the US over transgender rights in schools, where some feel the agenda is introduced to children too young, while others believe young people have the right to express what they feel they are. No, we don't let kids choose anything else. Are you kidding? We're currently tearing our hair out over the fact that Leonardo DiCaprio, who's 48 years old, currently has a 19-year-old girlfriend. Never mind that 19 is of legal age. We are throwing a fit even as we're saying that children as young as 3 or even before they're born are in a position to say what gender they are based on how they feel that day. Utter nonsense. Totally inconsistent, hypocritical. Oh, Dot had a nightmare. She woke up. Hi, lady. In Florida, the Don't Say Gay bill, okay, Daily Mail, do better, prevents the teaching or classroom instruction of gender identity or sexual orientation in children between kindergarten and the 6th grade. Transgender swimmers are a particularly fraught topic following a UPenn student Leah Thomas' success in the sport after she transitioned from male to female. Duh. Prior to her transition, Thomas was ranked between 500 and 600th in the country in a male division. Rose told the free speech podcast, Trigonometry, that realizing her mistake was like leaving a cult, a feeling she also confirmed in writing. She told the YouTube show, which is hosted by comedian Konstantin Kisin and Francis Foster, and explores fun but serious conversations, that this had led to her child transition, that she had led her child into transitioning. I no longer am a true believer, she said in an essay penned in August 2022 for the Parents with Inconvenient Truth About Trans Substack newsletter. Good for her. This experience for me has felt like leaving a cult, this we know. As the two boys grew up, the parents used he, him for their pronouns, but did not tell them they were boys. In Rose's essay, called True Believer, she said this meant she was primed to look for clues that her children could be transgender. When her older son, who had always gravitated more toward women and had an affinity for feminine things, asked if he was a boy or girl, she told him that he could choose. She said, I was leading my innocent, sensitive child down a path of lies that were a direct on-ramp to psychological damage and lifelong invisible medical intervention, all in the name of love, acceptance, and liberation. Very glad she figured this out. I'm so glad her sons were permanently damaged by her beliefs. She must be too. Like, she says that it haunts her, and I imagine this is why. 6 months later, he came back to her saying he felt like a girl, wanting she, her pronouns, and to be called sister. Here's her essay. Parents are clashing with teachers across the U.S. over whether transgender teens can transition in classrooms without their parents' knowledge, and most cases are not always solved in the principal's office and often end up in court. Some states have put safeguards in place. In Virginia, a lawmaker is proposing a law to ensure parents are made aware. And in Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis has cracked down, we're going to talk about him next, on teacher gender identity with the Parental Rights in Education Act, aka Don't Say Gay. We know that's not the correct name. As a result, his name was changed and he wore girls' clothes to be socially transitioned, the process by which transgender children can adopt a new gendered identity. The mother said she was praised by her peers and at support groups for the encouragement she'd given her child. She also said she was told by a gender therapist to break contact with anyone who did not use the new identity, something she finds shocking to look back on. Yes, this is how they do it. That's how you know you're in a cult. Break ties with anyone who doesn't immediately affirm your new belief. That is dangerous. That, I think, is probably one of the biggest red flags of a cult. But you see it all the time on the left. They're like, well, I no longer to speak to anybody in my family because they didn't agree with me about COVID. And you're like, you're in a cult. You really are. Like, that's one of the most potent ways that they can isolate you from everybody that you knew. And it's not good. Her son told her, Mama, this is your fault. You changed my name. Oh my. Our sons weren't actually trans. It was something else, Rose said. It had led my child into it. All I wanted was to go back in time and undo what I'd done. Just before her son's 8th birthday, she told him that males cannot be females, to which he at first was mad and sad. But the following day, she said he felt incredible relief at the revelation. Yeah, because he was confused. Jeez. Yeah, see? This is exactly what's happening. And we were told that this never happened. No, it's simultaneously not happening ever, and you're a bigot for thinking it is, and also it's good that it is, and you're a bigot for thinking that it's bad. Those two things are exactly what the left pushes on us, and it's deadly, and we need to recognize it and call it out when we see it and know that they are lying about this and about everything else like this, because they do this with other stuff too. I can't think of the other example right off the top of my head, but this is exactly what I'm referring to. We've seen a 120% increase in puberty blockers by year among children aged 6 to 17 years old. These are all minors. So here is the formerly very lowly ranked male swimmer who is now dominating female leagues, the Penn State swimmer Lydia Thomas, so-called. Now she says her sons are both blossoming and growing as boys, but that her mistake will be one that haunts her forever. She said the grief and the shock of what we did was so deep, so wide, so sharp, and penetrating. How could a mother do this to her child, to her children? She added that she only realized her former beliefs were part of a system now that she's out of it. That is often the case. So I found that article to be really, really interesting, and I think I kind of want to tweet it for sure. It's very important stuff. I'm really glad that she went on Trigonometry. That is a great place for her to go and talk about that stuff. They have such good conversations over there for sure, and they do good work. Konstantin Kizin and Francis. If you guys don't follow that show, you certainly should. In fact, I'm going to subscribe to their podcast now because I'm always looking for more podcasts. Oh, Adrian, yay. Adrian says, Cher and Madonna have boy toys and no one cares. Yes, exactly. That's a great point too. Madonna is 64 and she was last seen cavorting with a 26-year-old male, I think, and doing drugs with him, which is why I made the comparison between Bonnie Raitt and Madonna. And I really thought this was interesting because I really feel like this is what happens when you sell your soul. You end up looking like this. She's 64 years old, okay? She looks possessed, for lack of a better word. Something's wrong with her face, for sure. Far too many drugs, far too much alcohol, far too many injected drugs to try to make herself look what? I don't know if you guys remember her bathtub images. Like she shared a video from her bathroom one day and it was like incredibly creepy. She was stretched skin like a doll. It was horrifying. And I don't mean to traumatize Adrian with this, but this is Bonnie Raitt, who is almost 10 years older than Madonna. And she looks like a lovely, graceful lady. And I was reading about her background and she stopped drinking and drugs decades ago. She had one relationship, I believe, a marriage that lasted only about 8 years and basically fell apart because they were separated for so much of that time. And then she just has pretty much stuck to music. She's kept a low profile. She's taken sabbaticals when people in her life have died. Whereas Madonna has dated something like 14 different men. She's had 2 different marriages. She's consistently done drugs. I know you wouldn't believe it from looking at her, but she's nonstop done drugs and drinking like the whole time she's been alive, which just speaks to me of this lack of meaning. Even though she's a mother, she's been really just drifting and looking for these young people. Like, you know how we're criticizing, Leonardo DiCaprio for having a 19-year-old girlfriend. Yeah, she has boyfriends who are less than half her age, like 1/3 her age, honestly. But yeah, I made the point that one steeped herself in hedonism and Hollywood weirdness. One did not. Judge for yourself. Bonnie quit drugs and alcohol decades ago. Madonna was recently doing drugs with a young boyfriend. Bonnie had one marriage that fell apart. Madonna has had 14 plus paramours. Bonnie was a hippie. Madonna was a feminist. And I feel like you can see the results of feminism right on her face. I also feel like she's someone that is never told no. I feel like some of these celebrities get to the spot where people are just unwilling to call them on their BS. And with these lower profile celebrities, probably like Bonnie, she was in a position where people were able to push back on her. And if she had a bad idea, she would have some kind of accountability. But anyway, I just wanted to raise that for a second because I thought it was so interesting. I love the Desiderata, which talks about aging gracefully, accepting the things of age as they come. And I think that's the best way to look at it. I suspect that's what Bonnie Raitt has done. All right, you guys, Adrian's here, which is awesome. She says 26 based. 26, so they're not on their parents' insurance. Yeah, so actually I think the reasoning with 26 was that your brain is 100% developed by that age. I think at 25, your brain has officially stopped developing. We need to raise the voting age to 21. Yes, raise everything. Raise voting, raise the draft, raise joining the military, raise smoking, raise drinking, raise gambling. Everything. Give it one age, 21 or 25. I favor 25. That might be asking too much. 21 might be a better compromise. She says, affirming anything is stupid. That's Adrian. I'm so over all of this language. Yes, that's why I push back so hard against gender affirming care. I hate it so much. It's complete nonsense. It's a lie. You're not affirming a gender. You're cutting someone's physical body, and you're going to irreversibly damage them just to make them feel. And I was thinking about this too. I was like, do we offer any surgeries for any other kind of mental disorder? For any other kind of mental trouble? Absolutely not. And I'm really strongly going to recommend you guys read J.K. Rowling. She had a pseudonym, and her pseudonym was, let me look up the name of her book series, Cormoran Strike. Let me see. That was the name of her protagonist. Cormoran Strike. Yeah, okay. A series of crime fiction novels written by British author J.K. Rowling, published under the pseudonym Robert Galbraith. So she had, I think it was The Cuckoo's Calling. I think that was the one about, yeah, okay. Cuckoo's Calling was the first one, which is where there is someone who lives under the delusion that they should be handicapped. Her protagonist is a male veteran who was injured in the war, which strong start to begin with. He had like some form of amputation, and she talks about how it feels for somebody who had an involuntary amputation to be dealing with somebody who has the mental disorder of believing that they should be handicapped, which is an interesting idea that was well ahead of her time. Oh, all right, I talk too much. We need to make shaming normal again. We need to understand the role that shame and guilt play in societies. They're not unimportant, and we've completely rejected them. And I feel like a lot of the anger we see in society is just guilt that has nowhere to go, that people don't know how to express. God's gender affirming care for minors, a good diet, limited social media, exercise, loving parents, and a good church. I'm inclined to agree with that. All right. Sir Ranko says frontal cortex doesn't fully develop on average until 25. Exactly. Also, underage drinking and using drugs can stunt brain growth as well, which I think explains a lot for many millennials and Gen Zers. Yeah, for sure. I bet most of those people don't even live in Oklahoma. Yeah, likely not. They target kids in puberty. Puberty is awkward and sucks. I thought being a boy would be cool, but now I'm a mom of 2 and happy in my femininity. Exactly. So I never thought along those lines, but I was certainly a tomboy. I was like taller and wider, heavier, more awkward than the other girls I saw. I knew when I was watching Disney that I did not identify with any of the Disney princesses because I felt like I was built like a guy. But that just led to me wearing guys' clothes and feeling super uncomfortable. And then eventually I grew into myself, and I love being a female. And I think and hope that I'm able to be a mother at some point in the future. I identify as Michael Jackson. My pronouns are he. Old joke. Wanted to bring it back. That's a great joke. I agree. Am I the only watcher who compulsively focuses on the backdrops? I wind up straining to read the book titles. You are welcome to do so. We have a lot of good ones. I actually have this one right now that Andy has that was propping up my desk, or that was propping up my computer earlier. I also have this one that I really need to read. That's really interesting. I really like those Irish rebel songs, and I happen to know that some of my family got up to no good in Ireland during that time, I believe. So, yeah. Adrian says she looks like herself. I believe in connection to Bonnie Raitt. Yeah, for sure. Madonna has hands like the Crypt Keeper. Yeah, she's not looking good. She does look terrible. Poor lady. Again, lack of fulfillment. Raitt does look very graceful. She does. She looks like she has adjusted to the fact that she's been lucky enough to live as long as she has, and she's okay with it. And I noticed also that her hair got a white streak, not unlike Tulsi Gabbard when she was probably in her 30s or 40s. Hey, Andy is in the chat. I haven't read that IRA one. Looks cool though. 100%. Yeah, for sure. I disagree. Raising the military because that leaves a 3-year period for young men to wander aimlessly with no guidance or discipline. Maybe we should just change it for the draft, but you could join the military as young as 18. Oh, my Donna. That's great. Totally biased as I'm from a military family, but everyone I know who joined generally is better off than those who didn't. Yeah, it is different for everybody. I have one brother who joined and he was not happy with it. And now I have another brother who's currently in and he seems pretty happy with it. There's also overlap between what he can do in the military and what he'll be able to do once he's out. So that'll work well for him. St. Miles says Dot peak. Yeah, I got to show you guys Dot one more time. I'm going to lift her up. You guys can see her sleeping. Make sure you guys can see her. Here she is sleeping. Oh my gosh, isn't she cute? This little caterpillar. She's doing her thing. Oh, she loves to sleep on my arm. When we're trying to sleep, we're not crate training her. She's allowed to sleep in bed with us. She likes to flop across us. So we'll be like lying on our side and she'll like stop on like halfway. It's hard to explain. She stops halfway over us and she'll just lie across the top of our side. So she'll have her feet on one side. Oh, and her head on the other. There she is. Look how cute she is. If you guys want to follow us on Instagram, we are at, hello, you want to talk? We are at the Lighter Dips. LEITERDIPS. That's our family name. A combination of Lighterman and Dip, obviously. I don't think we're going to change it, even though Dot's here now, because Dip is a more senior member of the family. I did switch to live chat. Andy, thank you for reminding me. I think she has ticklish paws, because sometimes if I touch her feet, she'll get really jumpy. Yeah, I'm on live chat. Yep. I'm seeing all the chats YouTube doesn't want me to see. Here she is. Oh my gosh. She's so cute. Oh. I know you can barely see her face. There you go. There's her mouth. She has these little floppy ears that tend to fold over. Oh my god. Oh my gosh. She just licked me on the mouth. Oh, gross. Dot is a mix between Australian Shepherd and Shih Tzu. So she's going to be a barker. But that's okay, because she's also going to live a really long time, and she's going to be super smart. Please don't bite me. Oh my gosh. Okay. Great. Awesome. Yeah, okay. Did you remember to change your chat to live? Thank you for asking, Quantum Strange Cork. I did. You and Andy are an amazing... Yo, Andy, you are an amazing skater. I follow your stuff on Instagram. He is an amazing skater, like unsettlingly so. And if I hadn't broken my wrist the last time I skated, I would certainly be doing more of that. St. Miles, thank you so much, sir. Dip and Dot treats or toys. Thank you. I appreciate your super chat more than you know. Fluffy Mittens, I thought Adrian might like to see Dot. She's adorable. Instagram.com/TheLighterDips. Puppy slobber is harmless, yes, but it is disgusting. And I happen to know that she licks herself frequently in very gross places. I wouldn't want Dip to lick me, and I certainly don't want Dot to lick me. She's just a sloppy little toddler, so yuck. So I try to keep puppy tongues away from my mouth, but like Andy and I were talking about the other day, they have this sneaky method of turning their tongues into like weaponized little darts. Oh, she's chewing on my calendar. That's nice. They turn it into like weaponized little skinny little lizard tongue and just like slip it into your mouth when you're like not paying attention. Adrian, yes, follow the dog, follow the cat. They're so cute. I just want to smell Dot's puppy breath. Oh my gosh, she has terrible breath. She's got puppy stink. She's got that puppy funk. She's got that weird little odor. Please don't bite my ear. Thankfully, she's just licking it. Yeah, she smells like a puppy, even though I wash her every single day because she's itchy and we're trying to get her skin under control. I think it might partly just be because it's dry outside because it's winter, but in any case, ow, stop biting me. Jeez, dude. Here, let me give you a chew toy. She's got this cool thing because she loves to play, tug of war, but mostly she likes to do that when I put my foot on her bed and then she grabs the edge of her bed and she just like yanks on it. She's a silly goose. She likes to play with her little tennis ball. She loves to throw it under the bed and then she can't really wedge herself under there, so she's just kind of frustrated, kind of barks at it. She is an interesting barker because I realized that she was barking the other day and I went to check on her and I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Is she fighting with Dip? And she was standing at her food bowl. She's like barking. And I was like, what is happening right now? So I have so many questions about like raising a puppy. It's very an interesting experience. There we go. You know, you want to chew on that. That's awesome. Yeah. All right. Well, maybe we should do a meet and greet with Dot. I think that would be a lot of fun. We'll have to get her a little bit older. We'll get her really well socialized. We'll get her used to people. She loves people. She adores my mother-in-law and my father-in-law. Everybody who comes up to see her, they just fall in love with her. And it's exactly the same for Dip. They really, really love. Oh yeah, Sir Renko points out frequent washing could also be causing dry skin. I do know that. So we're only going to do this for 1 week and see how she does with that. I want to let the shampoo do its work. It's designed by veterinarians to help fight some of that itchy stuff and some of the parasites that can arise. I don't think she has worms or anything. Congrats. I am just as shadow banned on Facebook. Yeah, I'm super like shadow banned on Twitter too, which is kind of irritating. It makes me feel like all my tweets are terrible. But yeah, Adrian, I love watching you on Facebook, but I feel like I never get a chance because I'm never over on Facebook. I feel like Facebook is just for boomers at this point. Maybe you should get into the Twitter Spaces. That was a lot of fun. I was doing that instead of Instagram for a little while. Twitter tends to be much less censorious than Instagram. Instagram really sucks, but no worries. All right, you guys, I'm going to wrap it here. I got some work stuff to finish up, and I will see you all tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining us, Adrian. We always have a good time seeing you here. Dot says goodbye. All right, bye, guys. Bye.